For post-match press conference, Mr. Jonathon Trott, Afghanistan head coach. If you guys have any questions, yes, please.
Jonathon, another probably a defeat in Test cricket, but where do you sort of put the where
Went
game
wrong.
change? Yes, where the game changed for Afghanistan.
Well, I think on day one on that wicket, getting bowled out for 198 like we did, and I think we lost 8 wickets for 88. That's where the game started to go wrong for us. We were in a good position. And then we were always behind the 8 ball a little bit. I thought the way that Sri Lanka batted as well, they showed us how to bat and get big first innings. Over 400 is your sort of standard innings to set up a test match, and they did that well. So we were behind quite a lot. So credit to them, and there were parts that I think we played and we held our own in the test match and actually got ourselves back into the game. But then this morning, I think Sri Lanka bowled really well with the new ball and got themselves back way ahead of the game.
You think that you can any positive that you can take for Afghanistan from this game?
I think the way that obviously Ibrahim's 100, the way that Ramad played in both innings as a number 3, you're looking for that solidity in that position. And a few other innings here and there, a few 40s. But I think you can't look past the fact, first innings 88 for 8. And then second innings, I think 70 odd for 9. We were 214 for 1. And then all out for 290 odd.
And you seem to have a problem with apart from the bottom order. Top order is giving you runs, but then you can see both innings that the bottom order has not contributed much. Is there anything that is a concern for you?
Well, that's always a concern. I think you're not going to win many test matches losing 88 for 8 in first innings and 70 for 9 in the second innings. So you're not going to win any test matches playing like that. So that needs to improve. Yeah.
Coach, the manner in which your fast bowlers went about things was quite impressive. A couple of them were making debuts as well, and one of them is some 18 years old, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what the good thing with Test cricket is, and unearthing these players that can perhaps go in and play all formats and developing their skills at that. I think coming as a fast bowler to play in Sri Lanka, it's a harsh baptism of fire, certainly in your first Test match. So I thought the way that they sort of acquitted themselves and the account of themselves they gave, I thought was pretty decent. But again, it shows obviously one of them getting injured. It shows it's not only the skill, it's the stamina, it's the test, it's endurance of the game that the Test match will always test you with. So that's the area we need to improve on. And I think as a side, and let me say this, obviously this is our 7th Test match as a nation. This year Sri Lanka played 10 Test matches in a calendar year. Previous years they've played 6 and 8, so they've played 24 Test matches in 3 years. We've played 7 Test matches in the history of, So for us where we are at the moment, and you've seen us in the formats, the T20 formats, the 50 over formats, the more cricket we get to play, the better. The more experience, the more bigger pool of players we can select from. So that's the exciting thing. I think for us to be able to come here and compete and go neck and neck with Sri Lanka and yesterday and dominate the day we did yesterday, it shows promising signs for the future.
Ibrahim has obviously improved himself in white ball cricket. Got a couple of hundreds in Sri Lanka as well. And his effort in this Test match, he's only 22 years old.
Yeah.
And future.
Exactly, and the skill of that. Yesterday he spent the whole day on the field. He fielded in the morning on day 3 of a Test match with humidity close to 40 degrees as a youngster. But also the mental strength it takes as well, getting naught in the first innings and then being able to field for 100 overs and then go out and spend the amount of time he did on the field is a credit to him as a youngster, and only as a good example for the rest of the players in Afghanistan. The standard is of Test cricket and the fitness that you need to be able to have or call upon, but also the way that he trains is second to none, and he's a great ambassador for the game and the country.
Yes, please. Finished?
Before the match, Hashatul spoke about needing to develop some fast bowlers to kind of have have a more proficient test team, how just on them again, in terms of their development, can you speak a little bit about them and what you kind of hope to achieve with the quicks that bowled in this country?
Well, the exciting thing is I think it's exactly 23 days until our next test match against Ireland in Abu Dhabi, which is, really good to see what we can build on there with regards to how this test match went. Naweed Zadran obviously came in and has been impressive. We had a bit of a training camp as well before arriving in Sri Lanka, but obviously he's come through the system in under-19 cricket, and you are starting to see the benefits and unearthing of players coming through, and there are a few other younger players that were involved in our squad during the UAE T20 series before India in January. So there is exciting players, but it's the word potential. I don't really like the word potential because it's always unfilled until you actually fulfill it. So I think it's a case of us now as coaches and the rest of the players around the likes of these talented young players is to help them develop and grow at the quickest rate possible, because that's often what defines a player, the way that they can develop their game and at the rate that it happens at.
And just kind of a word on where Test cricket stands for Afghanistan. Obviously Rashid Khan, a massive T20 and white ball player, great Test as well, but is it something that is quite a big focus for the entire system?
I think so, and I think the ACB will have to sit down and the likes of players, the importance of it, and whether the sort of the predominance of leagues around the world, the importance we put on Test cricket. Because there's a lot of other players we could perhaps call upon to play Test cricket or still playing the leagues. I think Sri Lanka faces the same issues as well, and so do all the cricketing nations. It's about when those tests are played and the availability of players, and when the players feel like the balance between leagues and playing for the national side. That's always it's always a double-edged sword a little bit, but I certainly would like to have a full batch of players to be able to select from, and hopefully for Ireland we can get that right.
You obviously have pretty close knowledge of the England system, having played there for a long time, and that's the other end of the scale in terms of resources. There's the conversation happening about how Test cricket kind of financially can be viable for teams like Afghanistan going forward. Do you see sense in there being like a Test cricket fund or something where the teams that have the kinds of resources that we're more familiar with seeing in England being kind of spread out a little bit more evenly, so that the other teams can sustain a Test program?
Well, I certainly feel that money is always a driver in a lot of decision, and cricketers have a short sort of window with their careers, and always trying to set themselves up and find the right balance between nation and leagues and that sort of stuff. The more money there is in Test cricket, the more attractive it's going to be for younger players to play it as well. And that's my one fear: is younger players aren't going to see it as a route to playing. And we saw the other day some fantastic Test matches, India and England. And so Test cricket, the games are there. There's fantastic games going on, and I think the way the T20 has sort of crept in, or one-day cricket has crept into Test cricket, is making Test cricket so exciting itself. We're seeing really close games, and you don't see many draws anymore. I think that was the one sort of bugbear on Test cricket is the draws, but you don't really see those anymore. So the ebbs and flows of Test cricket, I think, is so unique, and it's such a shame if that perhaps isn't protected and looked after and nurtured as much as possible.
Jonathon, after this one-off test, you have to play 3 one-days and 3 T20s. Normally, white ball cricket recently, so Afghan team shown their good potential compared to the test cricket. How do you feel about the next T20s and one-day series?
Well, very excited. I think, obviously trying to build on the cricket that we played at the World Cup, and take ourselves hopefully to the next level, and also then the T20's preparation for the World Cup. So I think the games generally between Sri Lanka and Afghanistan have always been quite close and a good fought series, and I think each team is making each other better and pushing each other, and we'll be looking to do that and come out on top sort of in Kandy and obviously Dambulla. And I think Sri Lanka is a great place to tour. I think you've got so many good facilities and grounds, Hambantota, Dambulla, Kandy, all the grounds you have here in Colombo. Fantastic place to tour, and for our players it's always good to come here and test yourselves not only against the conditions, but also the condition of the weather and the skill of the players on the Sri Lankan side.
We saw Navin Satran, I think just 18 years old, really performed every taking 4 wickets. How do you feel that fast bowler? Satran.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that type of fast bowler, because he's just 18 years old? I think.
Well, I'm very excited, obviously. The more fast bowlers you can select from, it's a great headache to have. But I think it's also a case of making sure that we look after players fitness-wise, and it's always tempting to overbowl these players and expose them perhaps a little bit too much too early. So we've got to make sure if he does play white ball cricket that he's ready and has the skills, because I've seen in the past and where players have perhaps played and not been ready, and it's probably set them back in that format for a little bit. We've got to make sure that, especially for younger players, we've got to look after them and physically, but also make sure they're ready to play and have the skills for it.
This test match ended with 1 day to spare. So recently we saw so many blames about the Sri Lankan wickets. How do you feel about the decisive wicket during this test match?
Well, I thought it was a good test match wicket. I think normally you come to Sri Lanka, you expect to see a lot more spin, but I think Chris Silverwood and his staff are trying to make sure that the Sri Lankan side can play in all conditions and contest and whatever conditions they're thrown upon them. So for us to come on and play on this, and for our players, yesterday I think was a huge step in the right direction against a major test playing nation like Sri Lanka. To only lose 1 wicket and only be 4 wickets in a day, I think it's good attritional sort of test match cricket. That's what test match cricket is about. The game goes slowly and then suddenly accelerates like it did today. We saw 10 wickets today quick in the space of maybe 30 overs. So the ebbs and flows of the game, and that's what makes it unique.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good. Thanks.
Thank you.